next week and the week after, but let's see. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to Phil's Recap and Review. The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live. Episode 4, What We. I mean, it sounds like an uncompleted thought, but that is the title of the episode, What We. And what... Oh my God, this was, I'm not gonna fake it, I'm not gonna go it, but there was some really, really amazing acting in this episode. I'll get to that in a second, but if you haven't joined us on one of these before, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, jump on in, share your thoughts on The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live this season. Pop it in the comment section if you're watching this at a later date. Get in the live chat if you're watching this live. You can also call on in at 781-990-8509. 781-990-8509. You can also text that number 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can leave voicemails and texts if you have some thoughts about The Walking Dead up until this point. I saw all of you guys leaving comments and questions. I see some of our old friends that we haven't seen for a while popping on into the comment section, leaving me some comments and leaving Joe and I some stuff, saying it's great to have us back, even if they're not feeling The Walking Dead. If they are feeling The Walking Dead, still good to have us, keeping them honest. And this was an episode of The Walking Dead. Joe, before we get into this too much, I need to applaud some of the best acting that in this particular episode. There was some great acting, and that is, of course, by the Roomba. The Roomba had the best work. The best part of this episode was the performance by the Roomba. The way the Roomba was spinning around in circles, I really truly believed it was a Roomba. They were in the building from Gremlins 2 in this episode too. They were in the Clamps building or whatever it's called, and this was an interesting episode of The Walking Dead, Joe. Not my favorite. I think you might be muted. I'm not sure.
I'm laughing away. It was an iRobot or a Roomba. It's the best advertisement ever for whichever one it was.
I love
also electrified Nissan Frontiers or whatever the fuck that is.
Yeah, the hybrid car. I like how we had so many comments of the way they had to explain the smart building. You know, people just kept innovating as time went on because they dated this in the real world that Roombas just started existing at the time that everything started to fall apart, according to Michonne. But I mean, okay, let's get the good out of the way here, Joe, before we start breaking down this episode. I'm going to say before I open up the floodgates for this episode, because this was my least favorite episode of the season. I could actually make arguments with you for episodes 1, 2, and 3 that I found enough in them that I fully would say I enjoyed them more than I did not like them. There was a few things in this episode I may get a little snuff up, I guess, with you. But for the most part, I found this episode to be tremendously boring. And I want to say this off the bat just because I don't know if it's a factor, but Michonne wrote this episode, or the actress that plays Michonne. She also, according to the inside the episode stuff.
She didn't just direct it.
She wrote it, and she, according to Gimples, she kind of showrun this episode too, and kind of pushed the direction of the themes.
This is the one that she was like, the zombie doesn't look right.
Possibly, yes. This was the episode. If we don't like this episode, we have to throw this all on Dania. This isn't Gimple.
I gotta tell you, Phil.
This was bad.
I'm gonna confess here. I'm gonna confess to you.
Oh, don't tell me you liked it and I hated it on this one. Oh my goodness.
I am going to confess to you right here, right now. This episode was so unwatchable to me. There was at least 2 parts that I fast forwarded and was like, really? They're still yelling at each other? Really? They're still just really? Okay. Oh, this looks like action. Let me back up a frame. There we go. Play.
Yeah. And again,
twice. And I don't think I missed a goddamn thing.
No.
Because all of it before I decided to start fast forwarding, right? Like all of it was like awful dialogue, awful acting, awful chemistry, not to the point where like there's not supposed to have good chemistry because, you know, look at the situation they're in and blah, blah, blah. I'm talking like even that, none of their argument felt real. None of it felt emotional. None of it felt like they were acting even. This felt so much like it was like a bad performance of like any couple arguing for some college student's thesis fucking
See,
drama show for their fucking high school or college or some shit. Like it's awful. It's unfucking watchable. Like the only thing that's I can't even tell you how bad it was watching these two actors who I have genuine appreciation for deliver dialogue so poorly, present so horribly in their chemistry. In no way did I feel like there was lost love, unrequited love, requited love. Like there was none of it at any point that seemed genuine to me in any of it. The writing felt really horrible and forced. Their direction, right to the point where Rick is like, where is that noise coming from? Why can't it just stop? It felt like they put in this bad, awful fucking like Twilight Zone half a second where this noise from beyond is going to drive Rick mad through the episode or something. Like it, like the whole thing was just fucking god awful.
I mean,
fucking awful.
I would maybe preface to say that I don't necessarily think some of the acting was bad between, and let me finish first. That
it felt bad theater.
It did feel bad theater, but individually, the performances of Andrew and Dania, I think, were both good individually. The problem is when they were interacting and fighting, I agree with you. Not for a goddamn red-ass second did I believe that they weren't going to be shiny, happy people at the end of this episode. Not for a goddamn ass second did I believe that Michonne was in any danger when a goddamn chandelier fell in her leg, but she's like, it was a flesh wound, and she just walks
go. Not on your
Not
life.
on your life. Did you break your leg when a damn chandelier fell on it? No, it feels okay. I'm just walking off. I'm just jogging away.
I'm just stuck a little bit.
Just a little bit. Don't worry about that. I mean, that thing would have taken off her leg. Did you see how high it was flying down?
And he's going. He's like, let me get the bolt undone. And instead, he finally gives up on the bolt and like lift. Dude, when we get into the recap, I could go through every fucking problem.
We'll get to it
because I would love to go through every fucking problem as long as we yada yada the leave without me. Don't leave. We gotta go back. Let me press the button. Don't press the button. What did they take from you?
But Joe,
minus all of that shit, which felt never fucking ending at all.
You treading on the problem that I had when watching this episode, trying to take notes. It's like they talk and they talk and they talk. They debate. They go back and forth. And because it was all much ado about nothing, and basically leading up to the fact that they were going to get along in the end of this episode anyway, a lot of what happened in this episode could have been 15 minutes of another episode where you actually have stuff happening. Instead of that, I mean, Rick finds out about RJ. This was the height of the background episode, the story, the movie.
Wait, you said children.
Children. I have two children.
I forgot about Carl. So awful.
I forgot about Carl. What about Carl?
They took Carl from me. What? Dude, Carl was dead long before, but he was all I dreamed.
This was one of the worst filler episodes of The Walking Dead I've ever seen. But I will say again,
this was a fucking piece of shit. Like let's see what you can do. This was awful.
Joe, that's a very much a Gene.
Awful.
I think you just quoted Gene Siskel when talking about like Hot Shots movie or something. It was awful. It was trash. I cannot even think it. Or an Ebert comment right there. But Joe, I don't want to turn this into an echo chamber of stuff.
I understand what they were trying to do.
And I think some of it was interesting in the sense of what they were trying to discuss. But it's one of those things where to do the point that they were trying to get across in this episode, they actively made Rick more stupid, and they made
thank you,
and they made Michonne more ignorant, and just to create fake drama that ultimately, and I guess the moral of the story is, anytime you're fighting kids, just fuck, it'll be okay. That's the
now
moral.
that they've found each other,
That's the moral.
will they find each other?
They can do anything. They can do anything. Don't get me wrong. I'm very sex positive. I like sex. It's good to have sex. But also,
And that was a long sex scene, no?
it was, and it was hottish, and whatever.
Like, I fast forwarded through it because I really didn't need to see it.
Right.
And honestly, like, I knew it was about to go there, and I was like, they're gonna fuck. Fast forward. Look at their fucking eyes.
Joe, to the point, you knew that at the beginning of the episode when they're fighting, they started going full Sam and Diane, moonlighting Sybil Shepherd and Bruce Willis.
You knew
in the
it
episode.
as soon as she decided to change with the door open, they were fucking.
Oh my goodness, what a horrible episode. For some reason, OBS is working weird and the chat, again, is not displaying on the screen, but we do see you guys in the Mother Grabbing chat. Let's get to the live chat and hear what you guys got to say. We got Mark A. Houston, new moderator on the channel and longtime supporter. Love you, buddy. And he says, Phil, don't rush the damn process. Yes, John Haymaker, we'll get into it. We also got a cool discussion tonight. We got Jay in the live chat. Great to see Jay. We got the one and only Tony Pajamas, my favorite name on YouTube. We got the amazing Killmonger. Roomba reminded me of Breaking Bad when Jesse was obsessed with that. I appreciate that you thought of a better show while watching this tonight. I couldn't think about anything other than The Walking Dead, but I wish I was thinking about the goddamn Breaking Bad tonight. Thank you for making me feel better, Killmonger. Joe likes when I hate things as much as he does. We got John Haymaker says, Joe Rant 321, you were right. Jesse, I only am watching this video because I don't know how to play drums and I'm mad. Don't worry, Jesse. I got your back, buddy. We'll do a drum lesson later. It'll be much more effective than The Walking Dead. We got Iron Throne. Haven't seen you in a while, buddy. Great to see. Welcome to the Walking Dead Issues program. Like it, and thank you, Iron Throne, one of the greatest moderators and one of the greatest sharing of all stuff out there for all of us awesome creators. We appreciate you always sharing the love, Iron. Killmonger, what's up? We got the infamous Kiki in the live chat. Great to see Kiki in there. We got Johnny Tabasco, another great YouTube name. Michonne's Pussy must have had magical powers because as soon as Rick got laid, his mind magically changed. And yes, they were calling their shot. Yeah. They were calling their shot on that through the whole entire episode. You just knew it was coming eventually, and you know they were both coming eventually. In the sex scene itself, Joe, you might have fast forwarded to. We'll get this in the recap a little bit.
Can I say Michonne must. No, I can't.
Hold that thought. It's daytime, Joe. But in that scene, it was also one of the stupidest sex scenes I've ever seen filmed, because there was a moment where were they trying to symbolize that Rick was trying to hold back finishing too early, and then they made eye contact. They're like, he's like, I can do it. I can hold back. And then they kissed. And there was like a moment where they paused and he was like crying and trembling. Like she was like, I don't know. There was a lot of like, let's break down Rick Grimes a little here. It was a cotton chandelier. Yeah, exactly. It was bouncy, Ian. I want to swing from the chandeliers. I wonder if that was metaphoric for the episode. Killmonger says, when they both killed the zombies at the same time, Rick got blood on her. That was cheesy. That whole segment when they came together and they were stabbing and going through, there was cheesy music playing as they busted out. That was Saved by the Bell level cheesy. Again, I'll argue with you, Joe, in what you said, and not argue with you because I'm not going to die on this goddamn branch today, I do think the acting individually on the two of them was all right. I think they just have crappy dialogue, and to that point, Dania is responsible for the damn dialogue. And responsible for the way this story went tonight. They were talking about in the after show episode, and I don't usually watch this, but I was waiting for Joe to pop up.
I can't. As soon as I see Gimple's fucking face,
yeah, it's tough.
I want to throw something at my television, and I paid too much money for it.
Yeah, it's true.
He elicit, because of what I read about, and whether that's true or not, but because of that, I cannot look at this man and think he does good. I'm sorry, but
it's not as bad as watching Dan and Dave try to rationalize last season of Game of Thrones.
My God.
That's beside the point. We were really trying to do here. I think Gimple at least seems to keep things light, but what he was saying...
Fuck him.
I agree.
He's got me really mad. How do you do that? I have a problem with this, so I'm going to, take steps to actively ruin this other
Right.
thing.
And he also mentioned in this episode how much he allowed Andrew and Dania to be a part of the writing process. I want to make a point here that may seem like a weird point to bring out of nowhere, but Captain Picard seasons 1 and 2 had a lot of issues. Season 3, I think through and through, was a great season of television. And the biggest difference between the first 2 seasons and that last season is the first 2 seasons, Patrick Stewart was a lot in the writer's room. He wanted to make things different from Star Trek, from the normal Star Trek story, and keep things away, and yada, yada, yada. I think sometimes it's better when the actors aren't in the writer's room. I love actors.
See,
I'm an actor too.
I really enjoyed season 1 and 2.
I really enjoyed season 3.
I like that. I don't get me wrong. I really enjoyed season 3 for what it was. It was Star Trek: The Next Generation movie.
Yeah, it was the good movie that it was the good Next Generation movie that we never got.
It was the old man movie
to me,
with
Joe,
all of them as old people.
Joe, I don't want to go down. I shouldn't have brought it up this way. I don't want to go down a Star Trek rabbit hole with you. But
Star Trek Red.
But the problem with me for the first 2 seasons of Picard is a little bit too Discovery-like. If I want to watch Discovery, I'll watch Discovery. If I want to watch something with Picard and Next Generation people, I don't want to see bang, 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 huge explosions at the end to solve the problems. And those 2 seasons solve those problems with big, jerk-offs with not a lot of comms, fantastic blow-up stuff instead of intellectual mind stuff where I think season 3 got the perfect balance of the 2 of those.
I enjoyed all of them for what they were. I enjoyed... Okay, here's my thing.
So bring it back to this. Do you enjoy this?
1 second. With everything they did in Star Trek, I like the breadth that season 1 of Picard is, because it's not what you're expecting.
No, I think it starts off. I think both those 2 seasons, and this is the last we'll talk about this, and maybe we'll do a full Star Trek Picard thing. I think the problem with it is both first 2 seasons start off really great and then end crappy. I think there's enough in the early parts of both those seasons to make it seem like it might go in a really interesting direction, but then they just drop the ball at the end. Unlike Rick Grimes and Michonne here, where my point more was that I think Andrew and Dania had a little bit too, and Dania, or I might be mispronouncing her name, Michonne and Rick might have had a little bit too much. Putting a little bit too much sugar in the cooking thing. And this episode just screamed of actors indulging themselves too much in theatrical stuff on a mainstream television show. To your point, I don't mind things feeling theatrical. The Breaking Bad episode, The Fly, feels theatrical in a good way. This felt theatrical in a bad way, like you're sitting there watching hour 3 of Waiting for Godot, and you're not...
Or Cat on a Hut Tin Roof. Or
something like that, which work when you're watching live, but when you're watching on a screen, you're like, you just trail off. Some things work in live theater that don't work in person. Dialogue-heavy stuff like this work when you're sitting there because you're feeling the energy of the actors. You're feeling that emotion that they're putting out there. When you watch stuff like that on screen, at least for me, if it's not very well written, and this wasn't very well written. This was, okay. Some of the dialogue, if we don't take the meaning behind the dialogue, the actual dialogue between them. But the problem, again, for me, and this is where I can't argue with you, the meaning was deballed. There was no emotional weight to it. Because again, and I'll repeat myself, I didn't believe for a second that Rick was going to stay and go back, and that conversation wouldn't end with Rick on Michonne's side. I didn't believe for a second that Rick would leave her, or she was in any danger, or either of them were in any danger at any part of this goddamn episode. And for
all of the things they yada yada and ignore and move past, this entire thing could have been one of them.
Yes, and for The Walking Dead to work, for me personally, and again, this is me, someone watching us may be like, Phil, not us. Okay, for me, for The Walking Dead to work, I need to feel like the characters I'm watching on screen are in danger. Like something bad could happen to them. Like some drama, some argument that they have might lead to someone making a mistake that somebody important could die. And I don't think these 2 are in danger at all. They're lasting these 6 episodes.
Okay,
there's not a chance
Phil,
either one of them are fucking dying.
Phil, I gotta tell you, can we get to the real meat and potato of
we have to?
Topic we need to talk about? No, not meat and potato of what we're doing, but
the Roomba again?
Nope. So there was one interesting piece of dialogue, and there was one interesting frame, both independent of each other, but definitely both a message to a conversation we had last podcast. where we mentioned they have definitely been listening to us and they have answered our questions really quickly in the past with the next episode
Yes.
or things like that. We highlighted the Carol thing. There's many things, right? But again, yet we talk and we complain and we say again for multiple week in a row, and they don't give us a timeline.
No, and they screwed with that a lot in this episode too.
But she gives a very specific timeline. It's been 8 years since the bridge.
Since the 8 years since the bridge. Yeah, how are they? Okay, I have a question for you in attribution to that, Joe. How do they not look older?
How do they not look old? Thank you, Phil.
Rick looks younger. Rick looks younger since the last time we've seen it.
They just don't. It's all that zombie guts they've slathered on themselves.
I guess.
Has kept the skin fresh.
Oh, I guess that's a scientific thing, right?
Yep.
We've learned that in the science of all this, and I don't know what.
Yeah.
I don't know.
One of the spinoffs explains it. I think. Yeah.
My ass. Okay.
So hold on, and to prove that this, and here's my theory about this, right, Phil, is that there's a guy who is sitting in the editor booth, okay, and he is watching our show, and he is like, so true, so right, and he is putting in these things, and to prove it, and to tell us he's listening, a graphic that we have used on this show for quite some years now.
Yeah, they threw this in, and we've used this.
Has been thrown into this episode.
Yeah, we use this on almost every Walking Dead episode that Joe and I have covered through history. We use this. I knew
we were using this. Someone sent this to us.
Yep.
No,
and they specifically kept. Yeah, they specifically. We don't know who sent this to us. It probably was one of the editors that sent us this particular meme, and I can't quite explain it, Joe. Usually I would argue with you, but
come on.
It seems like since and people that haven't watched our Walking Dead cast since the beginning, when we actually, I forget what season finale it was either season 5 or 6 maybe, we actually called AMC.
Oh, yes, we did.
After the episode live on the air and bitched on a voicemail that definitely went to somebody, and someone heard that. So Joe isn't completely off. Let's catch up in the chat before we get into this.
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised if it's actually Scott Gimple.
It could be. Gimple does seem like the kind of person that would do that. Would go back and look on every Reddit post. That being said, I'm surprised when I read a little bit about people's opinions on this episode before this episode, and saying that this was their favorite episode. This was one of their favorite episodes of The Walking Dead. Joe, I have to send you some of these people. Who are these bots? I mean, people. Who are these bots that people are hiring to put in comment sections? Is Gimple hiring people?
There's all sorts of people. Like, when you get to the end of the article, you'll read, if you buy or subscribe or do something, we might get money. And I'm guaranteeing you,
And Joe, I'm not talking about, and again, I want to make it clear because some people in the comment section are left us posts that are enjoying the season. I'm enjoying this season. I will say it again out loud. I am enjoying this season 10 times more than the final 3 years of The Walking Dead.
It's on par.
I think it's a little above.
Nope.
A little above.
Listen. The only thing that's a little above is the fact that Michonne and Rick are in it.
Yes, that alone makes it better.
About it, everything else. Well, no.
That alone makes it better.
That's not fair.
The cinematography's better. The visuals are better. The zombies look like more. I agree. I think I disagree. I think the zombies look.
You just like the flashy red flashlight.
I do, but I also think they've spent more time in the
like a cat.
I think that
shiny.
Whoa, what's that over there? Sorry, I'm distracted. I also think that they've spent more time and effort in the creature shop, and the zombies look better than they have in years. And personally,
okay, here's the thing about the zombies. I don't know if they look better or worse than they have in years. I don't think any of the cinematography.
Really care.
Listen, I don't know if any of the cinematography or the way the shots are set up are any better than they have been in years. Those aren't things that I ever found a problem with The Walking Dead in the first place. So to me, that is on par with what I've always seen. Those were always things that I thought were great. And to say like, oh, because Michonne and Rick are in it, that automatically makes it better. That's not true. And this episode proves that to me, because their acting is not fucking fantastic and out of this world, and they don't feel comfortable together. And there is something very wrong with a large part of this episode when it's the two of them on screen together,
Joe.
and it's leaving you feeling this way. So hold on. And to say that the actress that plays Carol or Norman Reedus or Jeffrey Dean,
Melissa McBride,
that these actors haven't been able to hold their own in the way they've acted with such terrible writing and terrible direction and terrible fucking show running, sans the things I just mentioned not having a problem with, right? Like, that's unfair to those characters. And that's why I also say it's on par, because I don't find, especially with this episode, highlighting, and the fact that Jadis is in both of them, and the fact that it just...
I want to add to that question of that to say, where I agree and disagree. I agree that the acting is similar, but I think the problem is these two actors at this point in certain scenes have a lack of chemistry. But yes. I think that adds to what you're talking about, even beyond the performance for me individually. I do want to answer a question or ask you a question.
I think their chemistry comes out in a little bit in their action scenes, but it feels choreographed.
I think it feels a little bit more when they're funny arguing instead of serious arguing. I like their funny arguing. It feels...
That's because Michonne does have a genuinely sweet, nice smile.
Yes, and she's witty, and like when she puts those, like, okay, Mr. Commando Man, like that kind, like, again, if that part of the episode, if the arguing part of the episode was 10 minutes of this episode, Joe, instead of 45 minutes of a 55-minute episode, if it was 10 minutes of arguing, I would come out here and say they were effective arguing, because when she turns to him and goes, okay, Mr. Soldier Man, you stupid, blah, 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 there was like 5 minutes of that I could deal with, but again, it was like 40 minutes of it, and I might be exaggerating a little bit. I do want to ask a question of you and go in this direction too, Joe, because someone asked this question and you said something about Norman Reedus. On the scales of these Walking Dead shows, I know you haven't watched Dead City, but I know you actually liked Daryl. Someone asked, is the Daryl show trash? What are your opinions of this?
Daryl show is trash as well.
Do you consider this on par with the Daryl, or Daryl was a little bit better?
Yeah, it's on par with Daryl. Daryl's on par with The Walking Dead. They're all
the same to you.
They're all the same to me now at this point. They all end up making these awful writing decisions, like directional decisions that are just, I don't get what, like, you're trying to do in the slightest.
Now, let's catch up in the live chat before we get into our recap here. Oltorf says, someone asked what happened to Carl. Carl got killed stupidly because Gimple wanted Carl off the show because his dad was pissing him off.
No, it was Glenn.
No. The kid who played
Glenn,
Darryl.
he killed...
No, he also killed what's his name? Killed Chandler.
Carl.
Chandler's character, because
he killed them all.
But he specifically killed, and Chandler says this, killed him because Chandler's family was a pain in the ass.
Right.
And Chandler was a little bit they like killed him off because, hey, well, let's do something funky. And I know what you were saying about Glenn last week, but specifically about Carl, what happened to Carl? They made him stupid in a moment. They created a character to have Carl help and just cause Carl to die and give him a big episode. But basically what I've read is that Carl's parents were pissed off, like he was doing the tour, like there was some Kenny Kramer shit going on.
They wanted him to film in between going to college.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah, go to college.
That's what it was. And they wanted to sort of write him to be more of a part-time character, why he went to college, and then they could bring him back involved and stuff after the fact.
Which would have been the smartest move.
That's what they did with what's her name from like Roseanne stuff with and that's why they brought in Sarah Chalk and then brought back the other actress later. They let her go to college and then come back and do stuff. I mean, that's not a ridiculous thing to do, to write an actor off, not kill them on a show where Carl is so important for the future storylines of The Walking Dead. Anyways, I want to catch up on the chat here, Joe. Oltorf says, I hate this show so much. The Daryl Beth thing is better, says Killmonger. Daryl in Paris is the most regarded thing in the universe that I've seen, even since the comic. I thought I was watching HBO for a hot minute in the sex scene. I'll be happy when they make The Walking Dead about Walking Dead zombies, says Andrew. Is the Daryl Show. Hey, we got the wonderful, the amazing Stephanie Snow in the live chat. Johnny Tabasco, that's right. Isn't it amazing how everything changes after good sex? And Joe, I might have to check this out. Michonne's thick. I'm going to like this. Oh, I'm going to live this tomorrow. It doesn't exist. Like it so it doesn't happen tomorrow. The Picard Issues program. We will have a Picard Issues program. I will be on with my old friend Mark from Enchantment of Eternity next Friday, I think, talking about Tapestry. It'll be the first Star Trek stuff I've talked about for a while over on his channel. He reached out to ask me if I'd pop over there, and I said yes. Henry Cavill is in the writer's room for The Witcher. I heard a little spoiler leak information about Henry Cavill will be popping up in a movie that people are watching soon. If anyone wants me to disclose that information of where Henry Cavill is going to be popping up in a unexpected place, playing a version of a character that we know in a
double penetration movie,
in an upcoming a Versus movie coming up soon. I'm glad we aren't talking about The Walking Dead. Make it so. Mass Effect got me into Star Trek. Mass Effect's a great game. I would say Knights of the Old Republic got me more into Star Wars as a Star Trek fan. I was like, oh, Knights of the Old Republic. Now I'm a Star Wars fan. Song of Carol and Fire. I like that. Song of Ice and Carol. I can't believe Michonne spent a year in that store with that Nat guy. I thought it was just a couple of days. Hello, I am a robot. I like The Walking Dead. We got Muhammad, our brother from another mother.
A year
in that mall. We got the Walking David in the live chat. Make sure you leave us a voicemail, Walking David. Great to see you. And so, Joe, I don't spend a lot of attention on what other people are reviewing it. Sometimes, like when we get into Shogun a little bit later, I'm going to be reading someone else's review because I didn't take a recap because I had a medical procedure this week, so my head's been out of it a little bit, so it's harder to take notes. But I was thinking about doing that for The Walking Dead this morning, but I couldn't find a full recap. But I did come across the website Ready Steady Cut that I want to give 100% of awesome credit. Like, they're my favorite website now for whatever reason, because they trashed this episode, Joe. They gave it a 2 out of 10. They said, and I quote, the sum up of the episode, you got to give it to The Walking Dead credit for doing something genuinely different in an episode of The Walking Dead. But in its execution, almost nothing about it worked other than the performances. The first line of the review is, the pseudo-domestically stupid episode doesn't last long, but it's grating the whole time. Michonne is full of stupid ideas. I'm adding a few colorful metaphors. This is full of ideas, full of stupid ideas. She thinks they can run, but Rick says whatever. It's basically just a review that sounds like someone's reading our reviews. So I'll give Ready Steady Cut credit for not being toadies. But that being said, like, if someone says they like this or into it, I'm not like, fuck you or whatever. The stuff that was bothering me that I was reading this morning before I watched the episode, and I was like, what are people talking about? Is some people saying that this was one of their favorite episodes of The Walking Dead of all time. No, it's not. Do you know what worked? You know what kind of episode worked like this that didn't work here? The episode...
Those are bot reviews.
Or the final episode of the... it was in the final season or second last of the season when we got the Terminator 2 episode of The Walking Dead a couple of years ago. I feel like that was the last great episode of the main Walking Dead series. I
agree. That was a good episode. That was a really good episode.
And that was like, they tried to do something like this where it was very dialogue heavy one-on-one. But to my point, Joe, you were dealing with characters that you felt were maybe at risk to dying by the end of the episode because they were secondary characters, not the leads of the show. And it was towards the end of the series, so something bad could have happened to Father Gabriel, or I forget who the other guy was. Was it Aaron? So something could have happened to the two of them. Or Terminator 2 guy that you started to get, Robert Patrick, is that his name? You started to get like caring about him a little bit. I felt like tried to do a similar thing as this episode with the dialogue-heavy, theatrical kind of play, but it didn't work here for me at all.
No, this was they need to get to know each other after finding it. They need to find each other after finding each other moment.
But like, you need, and I think you need, and again, we're going to get into the recap in a second here. I think you needed that in this particular episode and in this particular season. You needed a catch-up thing, but to Joe's point, and something I've said 75 times now, this whole episode, everything that happens in the beginning part of this episode could have been 15, 20 minutes. And then you could have actually proceeded the storyline. But instead, they decided to indulge in a shortened season with a poorly crafted character piece that just didn't work for character. It didn't make us, all it made us think was, why are they temporarily making Andrew Lincoln stupid just so they can have a sex scene solve the problem, to pull off a stupid action scene to have shiny lights to make people like me go, wow, that's pretty cool. Because it was pretty cool at the end with the shiny light. And I would go one step further, that they went so on the nose with it, Joe. Remember I was talking about in the last week how they go red light, blue light between Michonne and Rick? They had everything shining red when Rick was still in charge. But once he went on Michonne's team, they have everything shining blue. Like they completely they like a complete 1-for-1 moment where it was a little on the goddamn motherfucking nose. Like seriously.
I can. Are we? Did we start the recap?
No, not yet. Let me play the fucking music now.
Play the fucking music, white boy.
Recap. I can't run around, but I can't act like an idiot. But okay, let's go. No one wants me. Whatever. We don't have to talk about my medical procedures. But no, I'm hurting right now. What up? We got David in the live chat. We got everyone. We got Lady Ace popping on in. Thank you to everyone. I do want to mention before we start our recap here, next week after the finale, we will be back to our 10:30 time slot. Today, I am only making it to 8-9 p.m. usually. And even if we do go out, we'll absolutely be on the season finale at 10:30. If for whatever reason we have to do afternoon next week too, we'll 100% be on the season finale, but we'll try to do the next 2 weeks late night. It's just easier when we're doubling up on things to do them, to do all in the afternoon. And tonight, St. Patrick's Day, and Katie Crow is working. Joe might want to go out and visit with her at the end of her shift and stuff like that too. So we are. He gives a look like, I'm not leaving my house. I'm playing video games. I don't know what you're talking about. I was trying, but anyways, so let's get into this.
Days of bar is long gone for me.
The red light is, unless you and I are going to, we got to start going to Sunday night karaoke's when the season's over again.
Oh yeah.
I
performed in public for the first time.
Yeah,
as part of a chorus. So.
Yeah. Oh, and I have some. I have to play you a video of producer Nick and I in Las Vegas doing karaoke a couple of months ago. It was pretty nice. Pretty ridiculous. Okay, so happy St. Patrick's cast. We know it's daytime, afternoon, but if you're out there drinking, a toast to you, my friends. So we open up with the star of the show, of course, Roomba. Roomba is flashing through as we get.
Okay.
No, let me at least finish the scene, and then we get the fart blossom of a million shots of what happened last week between Rick and Michonne. Like, remember that fast editing that I was trying to defend in other episodes, Joe? It was all stupid in this episode. They just they do this like weird flash after Roomba where we see a flash of them jumping off the thing and 1,000 flashes of Michonne and Rick, quick edits from the first stuff we've already seen.
Which is just episode. Them like crawling out of the water.
Yeah, and what the flying fuck was the flashback in the first episode with Rick now? It has no relevance to anything. I was hoping that, like the Kevin Finnery stuff when like let's get a pizza. Like that kind of stuff that happened in episode 1.
Those are the dreams. Those are the dreams.
But like, wouldn't you think that dream stuff would eventually come back if we were going to waste goddamn time in the opening episode on it?
No, because it's dreams, and dreams are stupid, dude. Let me ask you this, Phil. Let me ask this. So we're looking out one side of the building.
Yes.
In this apartment when the storm clears, right? Like, obviously there's some moments here, whatever
Gremlins
happens,
2 building,
the voice, whatever. But like, we see finally the window clears and they're kind of high up. So I'm thinking, all right, they climbed up a hill and they're in a house looking at the lake that's obviously there in front of a mountain range. Okay, great. Now, I want to just take a moment to run through this real quick. We find out through the episode that they're actually, when they look across and they see basically at the same height in a building, the helicopter, and we realize, oh, they're in a building. and they're multiple floors up because they both take stairs at one point and elevator.
And
to
I
get
would
the
add
fuck out.
I would add a smart building that somehow doesn't have a locking system, but everything else, but it talks to you.
Right, and so they have to go back down to get out, and the front of this building, which is obviously not the side they were looking at through the window with the lake, is like city
Yes.
and town and shit. Okay. um they
You lose your train of thought?
No, I just
You're
don't
just trying to
understand
understand.
how
You're
they
trying to
ended
understand.
up in that fucking apartment, how far up the building they went, how many zombies did they have to go through to get to that point? Like,
No, they
you
just
showed up none of that.
yeah, they
Like,
totally
they're
just yada
magically
yada.
halfway up a fucking building they have to scale down,
Yeah, they just yada
like,
yada that.
after jumping out of a fucking helicopter. Like, what the fuck? What the ever living fuck is that? Like, okay, they jump out of a helicopter and now they're halfway up a skyrise. Yeah, this will be great. And the apartment that they're in is a smart apartment
Yeah.
that has forever electricity and
And a
continually
Roomba.
charging everything.
And a shower.
None of the lights are even out. Look at the computer
Yeah.
monitors. No dust
No
anywhere.
dust. Oh no, they explained it. It's the Roomba, and it's got
The
running
Roomba,
water.
yeah, the Roomba is taking care of like all the tops of surfaces.
Roomba's
Like,
fill.
no cobwebs, no
Roomba's
spiders
full up.
on the walls.
You're telling me the Roomba's running for
Fuck this
the
shit.
Roomba fills up. You got to empty those things. And Killmonger says, "I thought it was weird. Yeah, they just found a perfect apartment. I've joked about it a couple times. If you've seen Gremlins 2, it was totally the Gremlins 2 building. They
like super fucking lucky. They're like, okay, how many floors did they check that were open, that were accessible, that they could get into, that had other apartments that they just walked past to get to this super luxury fucking apartment
yeah,
with clean clothes in the closet,
it's
a nice empty non-fucking disgusting refrigerator. Like,
it's so
still,
stupid. Yeah, there's no freezer burn in that refrigerator at all. My refrigerator in a modern, like now, whatever. David says,
right? Like,
crashed into the water in a helicopter. Yada yada yada. I'm just really tired today. That was, and I don't know if you know this, David. I mentioned this earlier before you popped in. This episode was actually written by Michonne, and apparently, according to Gimple, showrunned by Dania as well. So everything we see responsible in this particular episode, in the way that it affected our characters, was all generally orchestrated in a group, writing environment. But she was the one who put pen to paper on this particular script. So, and I don't know if there's other script writers on it. I have to look at the credits. But Gimple in the after Gimple special at the end, and the Gimple's Pimple Minute, talks about how, as he's popping out the his thoughts about the episode, mentions that Dania wrote this episode. And please, David, call in or leave a voicemail at some point before we're done with The Walking Dead, if you will. We'd love, as always, to hear your particular thoughts. But as Joe and I are holding our breath to get through this till we can talk about Shogun. So we get into our digital home and we hear the, "Welcome home, Dave. You're not supposed to be here, Rick." And this is a smart home that welcomes people in, but again, don't you think most smart homes that live in the zombie apocalypse, and if they're constantly designing these homes, they would have some sort of security systems on the doors to make sure that strange people don't wander into their apartments when you're dealing with people like the CRM around and zombies and all that sort of stuff? Wouldn't you want to protect yourself a little bit? But no, they can just wander easily into this beautiful, smart apartment, as Joe said, with a perfectly clean, like pristine clean refrigerator, water that looks more beautiful than my kitchen water, and no dirt in it because they have the endless self-cleaning Roomba. So, all of that aside, let's yada yada. We got Fernandez motherfucking T in the live chat. Always a better show when Fernandez is in the chat. So we get the digital house. This is our new home. We get our intro. Now, then starts the redundancy of our episode, of where I don't know how to take notes for this kind of crap. It's just Rick and Michonne say, You need time to think about this and get our attention. They just talk and they talk and they talk. We talk about flushing toilets and running water. They have a techie place, a cool refrigerator, some cool colors in the vibe. But in a sense, the opening scene had a little bit of a little bit too dark Game of Thrones.
Horribly acted, horribly written.
There's a working computer there too. There's no internet, I guess, or is there
the screen was on screensaver. He assumed there's passwords or whatever.
But there's an intranet in the building, maybe a self-contained within the building internet system. I don't know.
Right, but wouldn't that be fun? Like, there's an actual computer working. Maybe even if there is a lock on it, maybe we can factory reset it, restart it, maybe try to get an outside line if there is such a thing, or Wi-Fi.
I mean, we could
satellite signal. This place looks pretty fucking jimmied up. Let's see what's going on with this computer terminal. No.
Possibly.
No. Leave it on screensaver the whole time.
And let's not mention it. Let's just have Michonne make a passing comment about how she used to be a computer programmer.
Yeah. And horrible. I used to
do you know what that sounded like?
This too, and then I also
do you know what that sounded like, Joe?
Something else.
I just rewatched Cheers, so it might be sharp in my mind. It reminded
Diane?
me, yeah, Diane Chambers when she's like, "Oh, back in my second cottage, I was a blah blah blah."
A writer, an actress, a biochemist,
yes.
a fucking a psychologist.
It was you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, it was totally a Diane Chambers, but Michonne was totally Diane Chambers in that scene. So we also get one of my favorite bad Rick Grimes moments when he's like being a hornball in the corner watching her change, and they like make this awkward eye contact as he's like,
"I've seen you in 8 years, Michonne, and all you want to talk about is what you used to want to be."
Michonne, I don't know. Okay, we got Confessor Oak, which for Pokemon fans, that's an amazing.
What'd they take from you, Rick? My hand. What'd they take from you, Rick? My pride. What'd they take from you, Rick? My sanity.
My
What'd
dignity.
they take from you, Rick? My humanity. What'd they take from you, Rick?
But Joe, they will never take my freedom. So Fernandez T says, what I don't get is, didn't they figure out ways to safely move around the zombies already? Like, why skip out doing that? I mean, they just yada yada that moment. A lot of times when Rick's like, they seem like they might be in danger. They're like, no, we're gonna get out of this, whatever. I do want to read.
They even have them leading. Michonne has we see the Michonne trick at some point this season.
We 100% do.
Yet still. Instead of just taking two into the apartment and chopping some limbs and fucking teeth off. Like, what the fuck?
Thank you, David, for calling on in. We appreciate it.
Or how about you throw the Roomba down in the street or make some noise on that side of the building. Start throwing rocks at windows over there. So
now,
they all go away.
I don't know if Fernandez T is trying to manipulate a situation, but everyone kiss him. He's Irish. So Confessor Oak, who amazing. Sorry, I'm cheesy. I love that Confessor Oak. Question: do you think these Walking Dead shows will bring the comic explanation into place about, spoiler alert for people that don't want to know this, an alien virus? Would you say there's any foreshadowing that we've seen so far in anything we've seen in the TV show about alien virus stuff? I don't think so. Not that I've seen.
What? Does it matter? Does it matter?
Will we get an explanation?
The one thing that I could care less about if I was any of these people that survived this
is why it happened,
or was born into it, is why it fucking happened.
In fairness, Joe,
why did it happen?
I would maybe want to know.
Don't know, really?
I would maybe want to know why, just to know if it could stop. But after this long, I would stop worrying about that. Because, like, look at the movie Maximum Overdrive when the trucks all come alive, the Stephen King movie. Like, if they had known the comet was in orbit, and once the comet moved, I might have hit a different way than trying to survive through that. So maybe somewhat knowing what causes it might help. But in this situation, to your point, when it's been, what have we figured, like 20 plus years or so, like something like that?
At least 15 years.
At least 15 years, then you forget about that. After about 5 years or so, time is going to be irrelevant to you. You're just not going to have any, especially when no clocks and like time is going to be the first thing to disappear in a apocalypse world that you just have no concept of what time is.
Yeah.
Except for the days. You could watch across the days, but.
And as a you can assume it's one of three things. Either we made it, either it fell from space, either it mutated from something already here, or it was four things, or released from the fucking permafrost. Take your fucking pick. Any one of those 4 things can do it.
I mean,
and what does it matter? Any one of those 4 things, as long as you know what it is, it matters not how it happens.
Unless it's part of the plot where you say something like The Last of Us, where the fact of it being fungus or whatever, like that becomes a part of the story in the sense
you can annihilate the fungus, you can annihilate it all.
Exactly, it becomes important in the plot. I think in The Walking Dead, it's less important because
there's nobody working on a cure to the virus.
But to the question, I think if anything, they've dissuaded that with stuff we saw in season 1 with the CDC. And I'm trying to remember stuff that's said in that episode, but I believe
it's whispered into Rick's ear.
Doesn't he say it came from them though?
He says we all have we all have it. I think Rick lets it out later that everybody has it. So no matter how you die, you change.
Right. Okay. So, but I can't remember. I'd have to rewatch the CDC episode to see if there's any talk about how it started.
Yeah.
Does he mention that at all in that episode? But again, it's been a while. We'll rewatch that.
And as far as we know, it's passed on.
Yeah. Yep.
But what we don't know is like whether or not if it's passed on in birth. The birth children, if they get bit, will they change?
Right, or if it's something that's just an aerosol that's in the air that just can't be stopped at this point.
Right, like, and honestly, it doesn't matter so much because what are the odds you're gonna find the person that finds the fucking cure? Just make sure you stay alive.
John Haymaker says that the guy in the CDC said it was airborne at that point. Oltorf says, like, who even cares at this point? I'd be walking around the woods for Atlanta for like 20 years. Okay, so Rick is being a hornball, watching her change. Before we get into that, let's listen to our good buddy, the Walking David's voicemail.
Basically, you make a fucking house in the trees with bridges across the fucking branches, and you try to stay hidden in the treetops as long as you can possible in the fucking apocalypse. You eat squirrels and birds forever.
Yummy. Okay, and some honey maybe. So let's hear what David has to say about this episode.
Michonne, I can't leave. If I leave, they'll kill me.
Honestly, I didn't know he was going to be in character. Let me rewind that. Sorry.
I leave, they'll kill me. If you leave, they'll kill me.
Rick Grimes apparently has left us a message to try to explain to Joe and I what the hell is going on tonight. Let's see what Rick Grimes has to say.
Michonne,
like it is, Rick.
I can't leave. If I leave, they'll kill me.
Don't leave.
And if I stay, I'll die.
Don't leave. Don't
die.
So I know I'm better off going home to see you and my daughter and my new son, but I can't because of reasons. Michonne, I can't explain the reasons right now, but they're out there somewhere. And then we've got to find the reasons before they find us. And I don't want to hear about RJ. I don't want to know. I have another son who's a terrible actor out there. I don't know why I keep producing these terrible actors. I don't know, Michonne. No.
Awesome job, David. Thank you so much, buddy. And I would say, maybe it's a male sexually transmitted disease of being a bad actor, because I think Judith is a pretty good actor. I think the actress that plays Judith is pretty good. But maybe because she's just so much better than everybody else. But I
have a problem with the acting in this episode. I think is fucking awful. I think it's super melodramatic. I think it's bad for even a soap opera. I think the writing is horrible. I think the timing of their line deliveries are horrible. I think the short looks, the close-ups, and the eyebrow raises are all fucking like just
awful.
God, awful.
So
it is like moment to moment cliche response, and it is written so poorly. It's like this is remedial writing for don't get me wrong, but I can't write. I sat down one day and I was like, I want to write a script, and I have ideas and shit, and like I start writing and I'm like, okay, fuck script, I'm just gonna like write like a story, and like I go to read it back, like the 4 pages I just free wrote, and I've never sat down to write again because it like
Joe
read like this shit.
Yeah, Joe, I'm not someone like David that can actually write, or my friend Greg Quinn. These are like people that can actually write dialogue, that have a talent at it. I'm the same way. I would go a step further for me that, and I think you too. And again, this is us not blowing smoke up our asses, but Joe's a pretty good poem writer. I can write poems too and songs and stuff like that, like short stuff. I can write like, maybe a thesis paper or something like that and have it make sense. I took a creative writing class in college, and like the big assignment at the end was writing like either a giant play or a short story or something with dialogue mixed in. And I tried to write a science fiction thing about a space station, very inspired by Babylon 5 and Deep Space Nine. And I tried to read it back. It's the most awful, trite crap I've ever read in my life. It's trash. Like, I burned it. Like, my cousin Alan and I, we read it and just laughed our asses off about how bad I wrote.
Yeah,
like, I just can't write like that. Like, my brain can't allow me. I can come up with ideas and give it to someone like David or someone like my friend Greg or other people and have them expand on it. Like, I could have a ghostwriter on a story, Ghost Rider. I could have a ghostwriter. I could Nicolas Cage do this for me. But I couldn't write, and not everyone has that skill. Whoever's writing The Walking Dead, for the most part, in the last couple of years, shouldn't be doing it.
Right.
I guess that's what I'm saying. Okay, David's leaving you another voicemail. Let's get through a little bit more of this episode because we're dangerously early on it, but we're gonna yada some of this. So we talk about.
I think we should listen to that voicemail.
It hasn't come in yet. He's leaving it.
Oh, okay.
So we talk and we get Judith talk. They talk about Judith liking books. Michonne, and this is where Michonne turns into Diane Chambers for a second, where she's like, I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be a computer scientist. I wanted to be a history major. I wanted to do all these things. Blah 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 blah. And I wrote in big letters, Diane Chambers. She talks shit about the note that Rick wrote, and this is the stuff that I think works. And if it was just minimal, the stuff that the stuff they have the most chemistry doing, when she's ragging on him, when she's sassing him, she's good at that, and his reactions make it work in the sense of like, oh, so you're a writer now. For me, Joe. So if you're a writer,
oh yeah, you're
okay,
you're
Mr. Commando. Like again, if this was 15 minutes of the episode, I'd fight. It all worked. That part worked. That for you, yes. This part worked for me. This part felt genuine.
That's what you're going. Like
this part.
That note you left me in that poem. You're a pretty good poet. That story you left me in the poem. You left me in the canoe or whatever the fuck she said.
Joe, I'm gonna use an example.
Everything felt.
I'm gonna use an example from my taste of what worked and what didn't work. Some people may watch 90210 and watch Tori Spelling as an actor and go, she just sucks. I watch Tori Spelling as an actor and I say, when she does comedy, I buy it. When she does dramatic stuff, she speaks really quiet and she pretends to be sad. I feel like when they're being bashy against each other, witty back and forth, I feel the chemistry. When they're emotionally talking like, oh, I left you and I love you and we're special, it doesn't work for shit for me. When they're keeping things light and they're keeping things almost like a buddy comedy with each other, it works for me, Joe, because I'm not taking it as serious. But when they're trying to have hardcore, real dialogue that means something, that's when I'm on board with you. That's when I can't even begin, because there's so much of that other thing in this episode. It's like 5 minutes of what I'm saying is pretty good and like 45 minutes of shit. So
one of the things
I like the comedy.
One of the reasons why it doesn't work for me in that aspect, Phil, is this. The little barbs she throws at him, they don't feel like real gripes or real complaints that she would have in this moment that she would try to jump on him for. Like, there's so many other things and people and stuff she can emotionally try to drag him back with. I mean, she's like, you're commando and you're
right. She's trying to wake him up.
And it's the stuff that we know because we've seen her give looks about it or whatever. So it's like, it feels very forced.
No, and I hear you.
The audience already know, and we know that if we're seeing these looks, that Rick's seeing these looks. So he already knows. She doesn't have to vocalize that. There's so much more. You want to show about their bond, talk about their past, not about what the stupid shit is that she has a fucking little fucking problem with. Oh, you left me artwork, and like you left me like you wrote a note that I didn't like, and you tried to white fang me, like you tried to white fang me, motherfucker. How about
You tried to Arya
punch him in the
Nymeria.
jaw, or like
He tried to Nymeria. Yeah,
really, like just
I'm not
so much more like anger.
I don't disagree.
That
I
there
don't disagree.
should be for his not wanting to go, or for his trying to trick her to go. The anger just isn't here at all. No matter how happy she is to see him after 8 years, she isn't angry in the least for how his behavior is now, and the stupid shit that she's had to go through to try to drag his ass back. And all she could come up with to fucking to neg him is to neg him. Oh, look at your boots are nice, but they'd look better on like Bill over there with someone with feet that could fill them.
Yeah, no,
fair
joke.
What the fuck?
So she gets pissed off and she's happy. He's like, blah, blah, blah. They keep going back and forth and back and forth. This is when Rick has his moment where he gets annoyed with the voice. He's like, shut that voice up. And he talks shit. And again, I could talk about everything that they talk about in the dialogue, but if you're watching this show, you know what it is. They just basically are having a philosophical argument, going back and forth, wasting time till they have sex and then start agreeing. So he tells Michonne about Jadis and about... And Michonne almost like drops her like tongue out when she's like,
"Wait, she brought you here?
You believe
saw her already?
You didn't kill her? Well, she watched some spy movies and she has a envelope laying with some people that if anything happens to her, she will give it to John Locke and he'll come and find me. And even if I'm on the island, John Locke will get the black smoke monster and destroy me and Ben Linus and get me off this with the numbers. Curly. Like, it was pretty shitty. So he tells Michonne about Jadis in the store and
the file.
And the file. She's got a file for me.
She's got a file that will get delivered to the right people.
And we mentioned this before.
her.
Yeah, exactly. She saw some spy movies, and she also mentions in this your children. And RJ comes out, and Rick's just like, "You leave now. I stay here." Sorry, David. David's probably seeing nails across the chalkboard here. He got to do our Rick impressions.
I was doing Rick.
Yeah, I was double Rick. He's like, "Guys, stop that now. Don't ever do that again." Rick is like, he's like, even though the copter got, and then I think I was missing this because I was zoning out at this point. Their copter crashed, so Michonne's like, "Oh, we can just escape now because they're just gonna think we're dead." No, they won't. They're gonna be here to make sure of it. They'll know we survived because Jadis thinks you and I can do anything. So Michonne talks to the camera in the next scene, or to Rick, telling him about RJ, saying that RJ calls him the brave man, and him and Judith and the other Muppet babies tell the story about Rick all the time, and that he calls himself the little brave man. And he tells her about Okafor and the fight that they fought, and she's just like, "I don't give a fuck about Okafor. That's not your fight. That shit's not real. We're real. And you know, my friend in the mall, he was real, but your guys aren't real." And then we hear more. And then the helicopter shows up. Who's in the helicopter? Jadis and what's her name? Thorne? Do you think, or is it Red Team that's in the helicopter? I don't know. Whoever's in the helicopter.
But whoever it is, and they blow up the helicopter. They didn't.
No. I'm talking about when the second helicopter comes up and starts blowing up the building. And
right, that's the one that blows up the helicopter.
That blew up the other helicopter too. Okay.
So the helicopter number one that they were in, that Rick and Michonne jumped out of, crashed into the building,
and then the other helicopter came down and shot old helicopter to make sure it was destroyed, and then this helicopter went to the smart building and shot in the smart building, and then they have the most patient ever let's slowly escape from a crashing building scenes that I've ever seen in my life, but we'll get to that in a second.
And zombies pouring through the opening right behind me.
Right. Okay. So we get some, and then we talk about Jada or whoever came with the helicopters. Then we get action. The best.
Rick changes his mind and runs after
Joe,
her.
The best part of this episode.
My God! It's so.
We haven't got there yet, but the best part of this episode. Oh yeah, no, this is right where we got. Rick changes his mind and runs after her. But the best part of this whole entire episode, and the one credit I'll give this show for having checks and balance system. They actually made, when Michonne was running after shit hit the fan, they have her lose her wind quicker than she normally would because of the damage that she's had to her lungs in the year that she spent with the thing. They actually follow up on that, and they have her like breathing like that at a certain point in time. I give the show a minor amount of credit for not forgetting what they did 2 episodes ago, because The Walking Dead has definitely done that before, where they do something and they forget 2 episodes later that they did something. So I will give it a bit of credit in the writing, or the coordination counselor, the coordination person that made Sarah, oh wait, Michonne can't just run. Make sure that she's out of breath right here because she still have lung damage. And I noticed that, and I just want to give it credit. So
Okay.
they talk shit, and
that was probably one of Michonne's rememberings.
maybe,
Give her
exactly.
credit for it.
Maybe it was the actor saying, "Oh, guys, I should probably still have some lung damage in this moment."
Well, part of the writing is hers in this, and
I'm just saying I noticed it.
Yeah.
So it's and knowing that a lot of
Good.
shows
It's good.
ignore that stuff.
Sure.
It was some good coordination counseling, or
Good
whatever they
job.
call that person.
Good job, Walking Dead.
Yeah, and David says I appreciate that too. I did. It seems stupid.
We'll
but
add 1/10 of a star.
exactly. It's better than Game of Thrones with the damn coffee
Episode
cup.
gets 2.1 stars.
Yeah, it was better than the last season of Game of Thrones. They with a coffee cup and all that kind of crap. But continuity is the word. Thank you, David. I'm looking for the continuity coordinator. Thank you, David. That's the word I'm looking for.
2.1 out of 10. Not bad,
Thank you.
guys.
David, again, his nails on the chalkboard as I mispronounce people's terms. No, Phil. Actually, that's not what it's called. Okay, so we got a good voicemail from David. Let's play some of David's voicemail. Actually, no, we're gonna say Dave's messages.
Let's hear it.
It's a little longer. I want to get through this damn recap, Joe, and I just want to talk about this damn episode. I want to be done talking about this recap.
We'll be done. It's real quick from here. It's like,
I guess. So they talk some shit, and there's some decent acting in this moment, some chemistry. The building is falling as she finds a note.
But they make it back to the safe department.
They do, the safe half of the
The
building.
Roomba room.
Safe half of the building. Yeah, the Roomba room. We get some more one-liners about them, them going back and forth. As more tension is built up, more frustration, more back and forth. As
Fast forward through
this is me giving you everything to live with.
What happened?
What happened with you? What happened to you?
From you?
Tell me.
What they take from you?
And then she's like, why? And he's like, we should be afraid. I'm not a brave man anymore. And she just gets this look on her face.
And then we get the editor's message.
The
mystery editor's message.
She's so
Pops
disappointed.
on screen for us. Show us again. There it is.
There we go. We get this sign right here.
Carl.
They took Carl away from me. I was dreaming of Carl, and then I dreamed of you. And they dreamed of Carl.
Yeah.
Roomba continuity. Yes. Oh my God, Carl. So I love that in most situations. Like, there's one of these that someone did where it's the Jon Snow and or it's Kit Harington and Jason Momoa, and they have you as Jason Momoa and me as Kit Harington, like sitting on his lap. That makes sense. I love in this one they have you as Carl and me as Rick. Anyways, okay, so we got LC in the live chat. I'm watching now. It looks boring. Barely started. Is worth watching. I would say LC. You can fast forward the beginning part of the episode because it's basically them arguing for the whole episode, and then till the action starts with the last 20 minutes or so. So finally, she's like, "I don't know who you are," and she leaves, and the attack happens as I mentioned. As they fight together in the hallway, and it was just really cheesy. They're fighting, and they're fight. Do we miss them having sex? No, they haven't had sex yet, have they?
Yes, they did.
Okay.
We already talked about it.
Yeah, we did. So the chandelier falls down and it lands on her, and she's like, "Okay, don't worry, my leg isn't hurt." And then it's a really enclosed, weird scene where she's slowly killing a bunch of zombies that are really slowly walking into the area of which they are. In fact, I got so confused while I was watching it. I was like, did they end up in an elevator shaft? Because it seems like they're just walking in one at a time. Like,
no.
Did they fall in an elevator shaft?
No, they were in a stairwell.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
With rubble in the stairwell, which would only be more stairwell. That's what the thing about a stairwell is. It's only stairwell in there, unless someone brings trash into the stairwell to block up the stairwell.
Fair.
But there's nothing but stairwell above the stairwell until you get to the very top, which is usually more just concrete and stuff, because you want it to be fireproof.
Yeah, it's a top of Ghostbusters. Like, I'm thinking about Ghostbusters when you say this. Why
It's
are there
like fire safety shit?
Why are their heads on backwards? Because you know, it wouldn't look good the other way. If we did the other way, you wouldn't be able to see Joe and I's amazing faces. But it is great that you fun that you noticed that, because it is. It reminds me of that Spaceballs scene when they go through the beamer and then the heads on backwards. Why didn't anyone tell me my ass was this big? Thank you, Kelly Johnson. She became a member for 6 months, given an eighth of support. Wow, an eighth of support. Thank you so much. Didn't even elect for the dime bag, Kelly. You're getting us that full eighth of support. Phil, when is the next After Dark with you before with T? Hopefully this coming weekend or in the next coming weekends. I was watching in the live chat. I'll make sure I pop on the next one with him and Anna when Tony jumps on the next After Dark. That being said, sometime in the next 2 weeks, I think Tony and I will be back to some action and such. I'm going through a little bit of recovery after a medical procedure, so I'm a little slow and can't always bring the goofiness. So sometimes it's like I'd be on camera like, hi guys. I'm just like, let me jump in the chat on that. And that was the case the other night while watching. I was like, I'd be much better in the live chat right now. Okay, so I meant this episode. I'm staying here till it's over. Good, Elsie, don't go anywhere. So they both should go. Oh, this is where we have Michonne, you should go. No, you should. I'm not leaving. No, Rick. No, this is switches around. Excuse me. Michonne's like, Rick, you should go. I'm not doing that in my life. So then we get the scene in all red. It should be tense, but I'm not scared. And I'm going to zip through. As Joe says, there's not much less. Joe, should I just speed read the rest of this shit at this point?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just yada yada till they're like, okay, we're leaving now.
Yeah.
They get back to the apartment, they argue, and then they leave again.
That being said,
the building's
Miles Edward O'Brien, give me a beat. There we go. Okay, so here we go. Rick does a double tech babble as he goes, let me get off this thing off your head, and then he jumps off the whole thing and picks up and is able to pick up the chandelier off, and she just walks away in a nice, easy way. Joe, have you ever had something heavy laying on your leg for several minutes? Your leg's at least going to be asleep. Michonne's doing the Irish jig as she's dancing out of there. You know, again, come on, don't be idiots. So, as Rick does, then we go back. Oh, no. We go back to the smart room. This didn't happen. And then we have sexy time. Then Rick and Michonne decides to have sexy time. Rick is having a coming panic attack or something. There's a moment where they pause mid-sex and Rick gets this look on his face like he's about to come or he's upset. He realizes he wakes up from how stupid. It's literally a sex wake-up moment. To me, this is as stupid as you had in old movies like the Superman kiss, like a kiss can change your perspective. Basically, they had like Rick having sex, orgasming, woke him the fuck up.
There's a great quote, I forget what movie it's from, but you never underestimate the strength of a pussy hair. That shit could pull a train.
In movies, if you...
That shit could pull a train.
Especially with Superman. In movies, in television shows, you would think that the magic bullet penis or the magic vagina can solve all problems. In real life,
It can. That
is a television trope. That is a television trope, to quote you. One of the worst. Oh, yeah, fucking solves all problems. There you go. Yeah. Let's just fuck. Let's just kiss. You know, if the two romantic leads have problems, if they just kiss, oh, everything will be all right. That's not how fucking life works. It's not how life works. And we got a super chat from Kelly Johnson that asks, Joe, what are your opinions on the Batman the Animated Series reboot or Batman the Animated Series in general? I don't know if you've watched the reboot at all.
No, I have not watched.
Were you a fan of the old Batman Animated Series, the Kevin Conroy, Mark Hamill stuff?
But I was, but I can't. Even like 30 seconds of it now, I can't watch.
I feel like Justice League holds up a little bit better because it's fat, because it's a little. But I like both those. I think I pick and choose more episodes. Like there's an episode where Kevin Conroy plays like 4 or 5 different characters. I'm a bigger fan of it than Joe is, but I didn't think the reboot has quite the same magic, but I'm still excited for stuff. But I like the old Batman the Animated Series a lot. It's probably one of my favorite cartoons, and I think that age of cartoons on that network had a lot of awesome stuff with that. Gargoyles, Animaniacs, I think were all excellent shows on the WB back then. Were excellent shows. Okay, So they have their sexy time. They're having sex in the smart room. Rick is having his coming panic attacks, but boobs save him. He works it out, and now they're all, and he doesn't come, and love saves it all. Now they're all good. Love cures everything. I'm fucking stupid. It's fucking stupid.
All right, now let's gear up, Rambo Commando.
Now Rick cares about RJ. Rambo Commando. Where does the head go?
Everything but the like tying on of the fucking.
Yep, and then they and then they put it on. They go Rambo Commando. They go and they head out of there, and they talk about the skinny walkers and improvising things. Rick is like, it's good, and then she tells a story about the Walking Dead, a Walking Dead story about when the Muppet babies got kidnapped, and she's like, good thing you killed that bitch that killed our kids, and. She's like, you think you can't go back home, and he keeps trying to say, I want to stay in this situation, but she's like, no, you can go home. And he calls her the love of his life, and she's like, do you even love me anymore? He calls her the love of his life, and this is when we hear more about Carl, as we mentioned to before, as we get our Carl stuff, and Carl's dreams, Carl had a dream, and then they head out. They head into a hybrid car that they make a mention that we get another Wayne's World sales pitch going on there at the end of the episode.
How lucky that we picked the one car with the batteries and
the recharging batteries,
gas tanks.
Yeah, the recharging. Well, there's
full tanks of gas in the back seat that'll get us all the with the extra something that'll get us all the way.
Joe, there's
home.
some comedy I watched recently where someone was saying something like, "When we can figure out how to turn our piss into fuel, we're gonna be rich." It was like someone figured that out. Like it's like the self-pissing. It might have been Invincible.
This was absolutely stupid and went right along with the magical apartment on whatever magical floor they were on.
This was in the magical garage.
Straight to the magical car.
And
started no fucking problem.
No Back
I don't know
to the
how
Future,
you know that cars that have been sitting a while, no matter what, man, batteries fucking drain.
Yeah,
I don't care how many fucking batteries you got in the back that are exposed to like winters and summers.
But this is a high-tech car, a part of a high-tech machine.
This is fucking, and then it starts right up. I don't know if you know anything about cars, but when they sit in the same spot for long enough, the time,
there's a lot
is just fucking.
And one other thing I want to mention that was fucking stupid is when they go back to the room right before they have sex, in the building, or after they have sex and the building's starting to fall down, like literally fall down around them. Michonne's like, I'm not leaving till we figure out where we're going. And Rick's like, the fucking place is falling down. She's like, nope. And it was the slowest like panic. It reminds me of like a video game when you beat the boss and then you have to run out of the building as the building falls apart. And it's like you obviously could just take your, there's some games where you actually have to, like the original Metroid's a good example of you have to actually get out of there in time or you'll have to refight Mother Brain. But most games, modern games, it's just you can walk down at your own lovely pace, like Breath of the Wild or every Zelda game, or not Breath of the Wild, Ocarina of Time. You can just like slowly walk down after you beat Ganondorf to get outside to fight Ganon, and it's just like there's no way they're gonna stop that. And there's stuff like that in other there's a
it's only missing the choppers from like Star Quest.
Yes.
And Galaxy Quest.
Let's get into the live chat, and then I'm going to play David's voicemail, and we're going to switch over to another show here. Let's say this is what my voicemail is about. Okay, I can't wait to get to it. One of the lines of dialogue, well, super lucky. Let's grab the briefcase from Rick. It looks like it weighs a ton. Let me grab it. How about if they decide to leave? Yeah, exactly. How about once they decide to leave, it was the next day. Yeah, exactly. Once they decide to leave, suddenly it's the next morning. And we didn't even see like it's ridiculous. So do I have, I'm sorry, I'm looking. I want to put, everyone, if you haven't already, make sure you search out The Walking David on, you can find him on YouTube, you can find him on TikTok, you can find him pretty much everywhere, doing his reviews, doing his content, doing his impressions. Make sure you do that. David is a huge friend and member of our Issues program show family here, and make sure if you aren't already, you support the Walking Motherfrickin' David. I was gonna try to put a Walking David picture up on the screen while we talk, but I can't find it. I can't find my Walking David headshot. But here we go for a voicemail. Oh, jeez. The music's still playing. We finished the review before the music stopped. Let's listen to David's voicemail and hear what David has to say.
Bill, Joe, it's David. Joe, I just wanted to address all of the topics that you were talking about in regards to the writing and the acting and everything like that. And I first wanted to start off by saying thank you for saying some of the things that some of the deepest crevices within my heart want to express, but I just have a hard time. But you're like exposure therapy, you know? You just get enough Joe in your system every day, and you can be honest with yourself. But here's the thing. This is what happens when you allow actors to either direct themselves or write stuff themselves.
So true.
With impunity. I feel like the only rule that they gave Dania was, hey, don't put a lot of like curse words in this because I don't want it to feel like Michonne's a completely different character. And so I feel like there were some moments that they actively tried to write things more PG-13 that really shouldn't have been. Like, this was the cleanest episode in terms of dialogue. And I just mean, like, in terms of, like, dirty words out of the 4 that we've seen. And the other ones, they said shit and fuck and goddamn it and shit like that. But I don't think they said a curse word in this whole episode. If they did, I missed it, okay? Maybe it was when the Roomba backfired or whatever. But
fucking Roomba.
Here's the thing, is that this episode, based on the dialogue that they had, could have just been like a 15-minute webisode. Because it was the same conversations in different locations that Dania looked pretty in and that Andrew Lincoln looked handsome in. It was very self-indulgent. It was, like Joe said, it was super melodramatic. I don't know about soap opera level, because at least in a soap opera, there's different things being said. In this, it was, we have to go. I can't. But we have to. But I can't. But we must.
But
You're
I
right.
Can't.
You leave. But I can't. Not without you, but you can't. But you need to go because I can't, because I have to go back to make sure that you can, because I can't. Because if we go, then we can't. But I can't, you know, like it just kept going like that in circles, and it was just driving me kind of nuts because it's like, listen, both of these actors are extremely good actors when given good material. They are not the ones that are good at providing good material for themselves.
Nope.
I'd be curious to see what Andrew...
Yeah, 100%. I'd be curious to see what he was going to say. I'm curious to see what Andrew Lincoln. It's funny you say that, David. Before you got here, I was going on a similar rant attributed to Patrick Stewart in the first couple of seasons of Picard, in the sense of him having a little bit, in my mind, too much hand in the cookie jar. So, Joe, going into these final 2 episodes of Rick Grimes and Michonne, do you think, I have a question. I'm not going to ask you, are you going to have a good time or what you're hoping for or any stuff like that. Does Jadis and Thorne, are both of them dead by the end of these 2 episodes? Is this going to turn into like a chase kind of thing with Jadis chasing them in these final 2 episodes?
I don't know. No idea.
What's your instinct on how this is going to end? Do you think
is it supposed to be more fucking 6-episode seasons? I
don't know. And that's the thing. We've introduced John. That's why I'm saying, are we going to see John Locke again? Are we going to see who is going to be our antagonist for these final 2 episodes? I assume Jadis, and it all ends with Michonne killing Jadis and truly saving Rick. Or Thorne too, and Rick fighting Thorne, his old friend, the last connection to knowing all that sort of stuff. I assume those 2 characters come back. Well, John Locke hasn't had enough screen time for me to think he's going to be anything but our foreshadowing for our Voltron Walking Dead series when we have everyone come back together. Because I think my impression is that this series is going to end on some sort of cliffhanger of them getting back to Alexandria. The next season of Daryl is going to end up with him getting back to Alexandria or whatever. And then we're going to get a Walking Dead combo season, or Michonne or Negan and Maggie will end up there somehow too, and all of our crew will be back together for one final fight against the CRM. And then Rick will take over the CRM, and they'll use all those people and all the resources to recreate the world. That's my assumption of how all this is ending. Rick eventually runs this shit. He's John Locke, or the president of this shit. When the Alexandria people beat the CRM people in a war somehow. I don't know this. I didn't read the comics. I don't know if that's how the comics end, but that's the feeling that I have, that they're heading in that direction. But who knows? We will see. So, any last words on The Walking Dead, Joe, before we move on? No, Joe muted his mic. He's like, no, I'm done talking about this damn show. So we will be back next week to talk about the final 2 episodes of this. Or no, next week will only be the second to last episode, but next week is episode 5. Most likely we will be on in the evening, and so make sure you tune into that. But if worse comes to worse, again, we'll be around 1:30ish p.m. Eastern Standard Time if you want to watch the episode beforehand. I think it drops around 3 in the morning the night before. So at that point, I think it drops West Coast midnight. But we will be back. But we're going to try to be back for 10:30 after episode 5 and episode 6. Joe, any final thoughts on The Walking Dead before we jump ship to a different program?
I just dry heaved.
Okay, Joe dry heaved. He can't talk about the show.
I almost puked in my mouth a little bit.
He can't talk about this show without drinking. And the fact that he's not drinking talking about it is making Joe sick. So, everybody, and I'm just doing this just in case they decide to cut this up later. We're not going anywhere. Hey, everybody, if you enjoyed this, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share the channel with a friend, and join us for next week's fun. We'll be back very, very soon. Talk to you next time. Later. Okay, we're back. We're back. And before we get into the next show we're going to talk about, because I know Joe can't wait to talk about it, and I can't wait to talk about it, and I'm going to need Joe's help because I watched it. I've watched it every other time. I've watched it twice, but this time I only watched it once. But I do want to mention something else briefly before we start, because Joe and I aren't going to be covering. Well, maybe we'll get together after the 4th episode and do it. But Invincible is back finally for the final 4 episodes of the season. The first episode of the new second half of the season dropped. Very fun episode of the show. In the back half, I don't want to spoil too much about what happens, but if you're into Invincible and you're watching it this season and you're just curious when it came back, because it doesn't get a lot of fanfare in the sense of like announcing when it's coming. Amazon isn't good about that stuff unless it's The Lord of the Rings and advertising what they put on the air, or The Boys. I guess they advertise The Boys too, but most of their other shows, they just don't. They just drop. But the new season of Invincible is on the air, and if you've watched it, God damn it, what an amazing conclusion of this episode. I don't want to talk too much about that because Joe hasn't seen it, and people in the live chat probably haven't seen it yet. And we're running long anyway to get into talking about Shogun. We've wasted too much time with The Walking Dead, but I do want to say that Invincible was bloody awesome, Joe. So let me switch the screens around and get our thing going here. There we go. There's Shogun. Let me do a Shogun. Let me do oh no, where's Joe's Shogun? There's Joe's Shogun. Oh, it's too much Rick Grimes. Get Rick Grimes off Joe's screen. There we go. So let's get into this. Let me again play the theme song just in case I do decide to cut this up, and we'll get into our Invincible episode. Thank you everyone that's joined us this afternoon. We'll talk about Shogun. Invincible though, good episode. Started off real slow. Joe, I think one thing Joe wanted to talk about, or that we'll mention, I do believe that in voice acting, just as important as when you get actors on a set together, I think one criticism I will agree with what Joe mentioned when we were talking about this before the episode started. Some parts of this first episode of Invincible sound like the actors recorded their lines at different times. It sounds like 90s video game dialogue where it was recorded at the movie that I'm most surprised that did that actually works really well, Joe, is Shrek. Shrek was recorded definitely with everyone differently, but it doesn't sound like it. This at the beginning half of this episode sounded like it. But anyways, so definitely watch Invincible if you're feeling it. But let's get into another show. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to Phil's Recap and Review. Sorry, I'm talking a lot right now. This is for Shogun, Episode 4. I don't have the title of it in front of me right now, but what a great episode of Shogun. Another one. I don't think that now that we're 4 in, I'm confident that this show's not going to disappoint me all the way through. I know I've been hurt a lot in television shows that have started off well and then end off weak, but because they're combining this whole story into this one season, they're not trying to stretch this thing at all, and they've kept the rhythm and the energy of it episode by episode. I am feeling more confident to a point where I'm scared, Joe, that they're going to close this thing off so effing well, because this was another amazing episode of Shogun. This, to the point of another show we were talking about, the first half of this episode was a lot of character building type stuff. It was a lot of moving the plot along, showing how showing the bonding aspects of Mark and John and Anjin, like the two of them becoming closer. But it was done with such amazing subtlety and beauty, and the way it all comes together at the end in one of the most graphic scenes that they've had so far. And I do want to mention, since we're talking about actors and directors, I don't know the name of the guy. Let's see. Oh, yes. Frederick Otoye, or I think is his name. I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly. Directed Shogun's 4th episode. He has an impressive impressive catalog of television credits to his name. He's directed several, a lot of episodes of The Boys, of Chuck, of Fringe, of The Good Wife, and of The Walking Dead. So when they do this huge graphic moment at the end of the episode, when Toranaga's son makes this error in judgment, it was just hugely done with huge pop. When I was watching it, I'm like, I'm watching The Boys for a second. Why? And now I know why. Because they brought someone in that really knows how to shoot this stuff. And also, I was reading somebody's stupid criticism on a message board about this episode, about Toranaga's son at the end of the episode, being like, I didn't buy the end of this episode because we've seen nothing but Toranaga being smart. So why would you assume that his son would make a stupid mistake? You answered your own question, idiot, on the comment board. His son is trying to make his own name. I thought that was wonderful. I don't want to watch characters that don't make mistakes. I want to watch characters that make mistakes that make sense. I think the son made a mistake. You can correct me when I'm wrong in a second. I think the son made he's trying to make his own name. He made a judgment call in the moment. We've shown him to be short-sighted compared to the way his father thinks. I do think he made a mistake, but I think it's within character to have made that mistake, Joe. Tell me why I'm wrong.
I think he should. I kind of agreed with the comment in that it feels very TV tropey to me. The moment itself, I would have liked to have seen a smarter play, which would have been this kid having removed all the cannons from the battlefield,
right? Yeah,
and put them somewhere else.
He didn't have time.
When they show up that day,
I don't think he had time.
Oh, they had all night.
Can you move all those cannons all night?
Sure, you can.
They don't just roll.
Sure,
dude.
you can.
They're not on friggin' in through the woods in that when there's not roads.
You can put them somewhere. Yep, absolutely.
I don't know.
Yep.
It'd be tough.
But
I mean, I think he made a stupid mistake. It's war, Peacock. There will be casualties at this point. But I have a question for you. In the 80s series, I haven't read the book. In the 80s series, does the son make a similar but different mistake to start the war? Or is it on something else?
I don't.
You don't quite remember. That's fine. Last week, and I don't have a recap, so I am reading somebody else's review, so we may miss things, and I might not correctly dictate this. I will say that I missed Toranaga in this episode. The actor is so good that to have him at some of the best part of this episode was the beginning when they arrived there, and basically he manipulates another situation. Yabu is high as a horse running around, and he basically steals Yabu's army in that moment. He's just like, whatever. And then he pisses off to go let Yabu deal with Blackthorn. And it's amazing. And again, I don't have them all written down, Joe. I might be repeating myself, but I am going to say that since Eddie Murphy in the 80s, I might not like a person saying cursing as much as this actor playing Blackthorn. Like, Like his lines, like when he comes back into the village and sees the guy that pissed on him, and he's like, and they're having those miscommunications, when she's changing the translations, all that stuff is hilarious, and it really works. And in hearing his voice, the way he says he curses, feels rewarding in a way, like in a video game. When like in Batman Arkham Asylum, when you hit a character in a certain way and it just feels good. Hearing Blackthorn curse and call someone come dribbling, bash, or whatever he calls them, is just poetry to my ears. Another great episode, says Sonic Your Boy. Joe is right. He could have thrown, sorry, I can't read the end of that. We got Merle Davis, our amazing friend Tim.
So
he could have thrown like blankets over the cannons or him or something.
What doing that would have done would have been completely different. If he had done what I said, right, that forces Yabu, was that his name?
No, it was Ishido's men, I think.
Not Ishido's men. So it forces Ishido's men to then say, all right, Yabu, you're coming with me.
Yeah,
like I said.
Fair.
And it forces him to then say no, yes or no. It forces Yabu's hand to either be 100% loyal or go fucking get
instead. Yabu gets to still live in the trademark gray area and all over the place, and which is interesting for his character, but again is this forces Yabu into being on one side
also, but yes, I guess it does keep the door open for a little bit more gray area if all those men aren't dead, but all those men are dead.
Exactly.
Nobody's bringing a message back,
and I think
from a spy.
But I also, and I hear what you're saying, and I hear what the writer was saying, the commenter in the post was saying, but I actually think everything that we've seen of Toranaga's son so far, his stupid decision makes sense to me. It makes sense that he would think short-sighted like that. Because we have that scene a couple of episodes ago, and there was 2 scenes like that where Toranaga is trying to teach him not to think like in such quick terms. So we needed to see a negative payout for that because he's not his father. And that makes sense later on, while Toranaga always keeps his hand up his ass when that kid, in every situation to not give him enough credit. That being said, I see what you're saying, Joe. It would have made more sense if he was smarter, but I don't think he's smart. So, but we'll get into this. So this episode is called The Eightfold Fence. Let's read this person's review of it. Last week, Lord Toranaga formalized his arrangement with English sailor John Blackthorn by awarding him the noble title of Hadamoto, charged with diligently training Toranaga soldiers with a unique tactics. So we get into all of that in this episode, and we also get into a side.
Basically, he's just showing him that the cannons are super accurate,
right,
and then you can tie chains to them and do more destruction. But
and also,
we're going to teach your guys how to be super accurate first.
Exactly, because at first he's like, "What do I teach these guys?" And the other big part of this episode, obviously, is Mariko and him getting closer, and also we get follow up on the widow that we saw that lost that son that. The baby and the husband got killed earlier in the season. And she came out of nowhere in this episode with an amazing performance. In the sense of like the way she was freaking out and being like, I'm not dealing with this thing. But once she got signed up for the job, once she agreed to do this for 6 months, she was on his side. And in that moment with the guns and the standoff in the hut, I thought that was an amazing moment for her as a performance and how she sort of just got
her
into
deal
it.
Was this
and giving him the swords and all that stuff. I thought that really worked well.
This is her deal, right? Like she's put in that situation and she's consort to the barbarian and she feels like it's kind of insulting and people are going to look at it like it's kind of insulting or whatever, or maybe not. But ultimately she just kind of wants to die anyway, but she feels, certain pressures to do this no matter what for honor, for
and I think Mariko is very convincing, and she's also been through a shit ton and lost her husband apparently in that situation. So she's thinking, I can't tell this woman no. I can't. She's higher up on the evolutionary scale as she's Toranaga's advisor, and so there's all this stuff that she's put in a position where she can't say no, but she compromises. She doesn't just agree blind to it. Toranaga wanted a year. She agrees to 6 months. So she wasn't forced into this. She compromises and says, okay, I'll do 6 months in this and then I'll kill myself or whatever, so yep. I thought this was very cleverly written and well written and had a good checks and balance systems to the writing. and made sense. And I did miss Toranaga in this episode, but in the moments he was in the episode, worked really well.
Is still felt anyway throughout.
The other question I have, because there does seem to be some confusion between some people, and I thought it was obvious at the end of the episode when this woman, I forget her name, the consort to Anjin, leaves after tucking him in after the busy days, and then after the night before, Mariko and him have like the bonding situation where she opens up to him about everything that happened. It was her that snuck into his tent and they had sex at the end, right? It was Mariko. Some people are like, I'm not sure who that was.
It was a third woman.
No, it was not. Some people think it was a call girl. No, it was not. It was Mariko. They made it seem like that with the dark and the shadows, but that was 100% Mariko, right?
Yes, it was Mariko.
Okay, thank you. But it's funny you say that because there's so many people that are trying to make that argument. That wasn't her. That was the another consort that we saw earlier in the season. And because she was ignoring him in the scene afterwards. No, she just didn't want to disrespect the other consort or even disrespect her place in the situation after she just lost her husband. But that was 100% her. 100%.
Yep.
So the eightfold fence opens up with an introduction to the new surroundings and the circumstances that sorry everybody that waits for this. Here is a mini recap. Okay, so let's get into this. The eightfold fence opens up with an introduction to the new surroundings that and the circumstances that Blackthorn is in back in this town, where he initially landed and met the guy that pissed on him. Omni, I believe is his name, according to this article. Upon their return, Yabu proudly reclaims his army. When the soldiers chant Lord Toranaga's name, he appears jealous. But what did he think? I appreciate Yabu, but is Yabo really that delusional? Maybe he is. Maybe he's like has this narcissistic nature to him where he really does think like, oh, I'm going to impress Toranaga or how this army supports me. And then the army quickly just switches over to Toranaga. I thought it was kind of a funny scene. And Blackthorn discovers the deal with Toranaga isn't what he expected. His men aren't there. And he's not allowed to go in his ships and get his guns and all that kind of stuff. And they kind of stop him and demand that he requests stuff instead of just being able to go get it. Mariko introduces Blackthorn to his new home and his consort, Fuji. He's wildly uncomfortable by the whole situation, and he just can't fit into these local traditions. Blackthorn comes to appreciate her eventually after learning about the tragic death of her husband and son. The next morning, Blackthorn begins educating Yabu samurais on the English warfare. And we talked about this already a little bit, Joe. I thought all these scenes were done really well. But this is the beginning half of this episode is a moving along the plot episode. You know, there's in character progress. We're just some of this could have been some of this kind of almost is a montage-y. And which works. It's just there's not much to break down here other than Blackthorn really is true to his word more than Toranaga is, and he shows them how to fire cannons and starts teaching them how to work the process and not to rush the process. And there's some shit talk about how cannons aren't as accurate. He's like, "Oh, my fucking cannon is accurate as shit." And then there's everything with the pistols that happens, and we talked about this. Yabu seems enraged. Okay, the next morning, Blackthorn begins educating all of them. Though Yabu seems enraged, Blackthorn proves himself by setting up his cannons and demonstrating the accuracy. He assures his captors that the naval bombardment can win a war in hours and kill tons of men, instead of even if they're outnumbered, unlike months like a siege campaign. He returns home, and he shares a meal with Fuji and Mariko. And he gives Mariko a pistol, acknowledging her purpose in the household. Oh, no, where he gives Fuji a pistol with giving her... And then Fuji comes back and gives him the swords in honor of the samurai. And we all, because he can't be a Hatamoto and walk around without swords. And we also in this whole scene saw a big standoff that I mentioned before when the asshole samurai comes into the place to get Blackthorn's guns because he still doesn't respect this barbarian. And this sets up a big scene where it seems like it's going to turn into a big fight, but Mariko kind of handles the situation and says, listen, I know how to manipulate this. And she says, hand your guns to your consort. she's more important than, this guy will never dare. He doesn't say it, but he'll never dare put his hands on the consort to take those guns, but he will do it to you. So he hands them to her because she runs the house, and then he goes to grab them, and she goes like a little Kill Bill move or whatever, and she turns the gun on him, and it was a really awesome move, and it showed how she may be, like you said, Joe, dealing with this barbarian, feeling like she's in a fucked up situation, but when it comes to keeping her honor and keeping her Hatamoto's honor in this moment, barbarian or not, she's stepping the fuck up. And that was something that Mariko kind of called. And you see where she has a little bit of that Lord Toranaga in her, where she can kind of, I hate this term, but play, and you made fun of that I said it last time too, 3-dimensional chess, like where everyone else is playing checkers. And then those weird noodles that he eats that he thinks smells good, and they're making fun of him, the stale noodles. He says, oh, it tastes good. Later that night, Blackthorn starts bathing in a nearby spring and starts finally dealing with the cleaning himself up a little bit. And Mariko approaches him. They have a conversation, and she tells him a little bit more about their dark past and how it's weighed heavily on her. And we can kind of start to understand a little bit more what she's been through as they've played that in the background for most of the show so far, and how what happened to her family, and how she's not as connected to the Catholic stuff as Christian stuff as we think. Several short, sharp flashbacks punctuate her horror of the stuff she's went through. Future coming up. Blackthorn offers some sympathy, showing that he has no judgment and just sympathy and kind of love towards her. And this is where their connection really goes up, and she ends up pretending to be a courtesan later that night, and they share an intimate moment. And I thought, Joe, all this was played really well. I know you have far less to say when you like something. It's just like, you're like, it was good. I don't know what to say. It was fucking good. Fermented noodles. Thank you, John Haymaker. So, I thought this was all well and good. So, when we get to the end, I'm sure this is what as we proceed further here, Blackthorn deals with responsibilities and romance, figuring under Toranaga's scheme. Yabu is quietly in leagues with Omni. Both men favor Shido over Toranaga. Omni, partially influenced by somebody else, wants Yabu to seize the land with the army himself. He proposes some subterfuge, suggesting that Yabu allow Blackthorn to teach his men before offering them rifles and cannons to Shido. Shido's soldier shows up and arrives and offers Yabu a chance to pledge allegiance to all of them and come back with them. Yabu insists that he stick around for this cannon demonstration, but Omni quietly influences Toranaga's son. This is where it sets the situation up, Joe. And I forgot about this part, but the notes are right here. This article I'm reading is right. It wasn't just his son coming up with this thought himself. The asshole samurai, the pissing samurai Omni, kind of whispers in his ear a little bit. He's like, no, you fire those cannons on these dudes now. And kind of helps set fire to this whole situation. So that morning, quietly influences Toranaga's son. That morning, Naga instructs all the samurais to aim their cannons at Jozen and Ishido's men. They are blasted apart into ripping guts and disgusting boys and Walking Dead level violence. And then the swords come out and they hack up whoever's alive. And then Mariko says, it's war. War is coming. And that's pretty much the end of our episode. And I know that was a very quick recap, but ultimately that's what this episode was. We get the training segments with them training them with the cannons. We get the influence of Omni on Toranaga's son. We get Toranaga leaving for a while to kind of get out of Dodge City and handle his own business while everyone else is while the war starts. And we get the ultimate bond and relationship of Mariko and Blackthorn more ingratiating himself into the community by getting swords and getting his own place and starting to be more respected as a Hatamoto. And that's our episode of Shogun. Again, I think all 4 of these episodes have been excellent, and I am excited to see where the remainder of this season goes. This is the first show in a while I've been legitimately pumped and excited to watch each episode and can't wait to see where the story goes. I haven't flipped ahead, and I won't because I want to be surprised. So yeah, that's my thoughts on this episode. I think Joe might have walked away for a second, or he's here. Joe, do you have any final thoughts on this particular episode? No, I think Joe must have stepped away from the computer for a second. Let's get into the live chat. Take a couple comments before I wrap things up here. Sonic says Blackthorn got a decent bath, so finally he can get some booty. Yeah. I mean, did she finally give him the booty because he showered, because he bathed so much, or did she because he emotionally connected with her, or a little from column A, a little from column B? Kelly Johnson for the super chat. Thank you so much, Kelly. Phil, will the Danny Johnny romance flop in the books? My thought is, if they go in that direction in the books, no. Because if we do get these books, which I know Tony was talking about this the other night, he's very dubious that it's ever going to fucking happen. But if they do, or we'll probably get wins, but spring is a long shot, obviously. But because if we have to wait another same amount of time for spring as we've been waiting for, golly. I think there will be enough build up for it to make more sense. I trust George in delivering something that when George actually writes, but I trust George to walk something that takes a subtle hand to deliver in a reasonable way, where Dan and Dave just kind of do paint by numbers when it comes to creating stuff like that. So I think if George does go in that direction, I think it will make a hell of a lot more sense. So to answer your question, yes, I do think if it's done in the books, it won't be as big of a flop. That's the thing, isn't it? Where is the honor in the sense of, is the honor in the winning or in the style of which you win? A lot of things face those kind of things. Like Braun deals with that a lot or we deal with that with Braun in Game of Thrones a lot with, is the honor in just winning, or do you want to fight the right way and lose? So, interesting point. I am sitting in the damn captain's chair. But I am loving this show, and I cannot wait to see where it goes. So let me make sure I got all of our super chats and our stuff. Phil, do you think that John Romita Jr. could do a Game of Thrones? I think so. I think that's certainly a goddamn possibility. Kelly Johnson, I appreciate so much the support you give us. It means more than you know. Let me get this live chat. Back to the live chat. There we go. So, everybody, we've talked about The Walking Dead now. We've talked about Shogun, and we've mentioned Invincible. Joe and I will be back next week, next Sunday evening at 10:30 p.m. to talk about The Walking Dead. And we will be back at some point to talk about the next episode of Shogun. Worst case scenario, we will do the same thing on after our Walking Dead cast and always double these up. If we can, midweeks are tougher for Joe, and I'm having a lot of busy stuff during the weeks too, so the weeks become a little bit harder. Next week, Sonic, I think we will be on at 10:30 p.m. on Sunday evening for The Walking Dead. But if not, 1:30. We'll either be, I know, I'll try to we'll make the call by the weekend, but most likely 10:30 for the final two episodes, or after they air on the regular time, just because you get a few more randoms in here on nights like that, and I want to be able to drink, and I feel weirder drinking in the afternoon, even on St. Patrick's Day. I enjoy the show more when I drink. Yeah, and midweeks have been tough for the Shogun, just because Joe works till 9 or 10 when he gets back, and it's hard to kind of turn things on right away and get into the show in that sense. And also, I've been busy during the weeks too with getting up early for some medical stuff. So during the weeks for Shoguns have been tough. So we may, in fact, do Shogun after The Walking Dead for the final 2 weeks as well, until we start doing Shogun on Sunday nights until the season ends. But either way, I might do a quick phone review like I did last week after I watched the episode, just to get one out quick. and then eventually come out and talk to Joe about it live. I can hear Joe in the background. I'm about to wrap it up, Joe. Anything? I mean, this episode is kind of there's not much to talk about it other than say, what actually happened. But do you have any thoughts about, other than what you were saying earlier about the son possibly making some mistakes and thinking that was a little TV tropey for you?
The consort and the guns, that was a big scene, both as the gift exchange and when she, points the gun at what's his name's face, basically like, yeah, make a move, I'll shoot you in the face, your men will chop me down, but he'll be fine. Absolutely. Because you still can't touch him, and I'll be dead, and I'll be out of my whatever misery. It's just a really good scene.
It is an awesome fucking scene. It really is.
The blood and gore was great.
Yeah, and like I was saying it earlier, but couldn't you tell, like, now that you know that the boys director did that, can't you see it? Joe ran upstairs to go to the bathroom and come back, so he's out of breath. Nonfiction says I should have Tony. Just like me over there, Tony knows he's welcome to come over anytime he wants. I think what's more likely to happen is, I think I heard him say the other night he's going to do a Shogun live stream, so I'll end up popping over there. But Tony is more than welcome to pop on anytime we're talking about The Walking Dead or Shogun, and he knows that. And if he doesn't know that, I'm saying it. But you're more than welcome to pop on anytime, Tony. Always invited. Just like me, he always has the invitation. And I think he always has the link, theoretically. Maybe I have to make sure he has it, but it's a forever link to pop into here. David, if you look in David has it in his notes too, somewhere back there. But yeah, Joe, that was a huge scene, and I thought the way and what I was saying when you were gone was she might have really been disgusted by the fact that she was having to do this with the barbarian, but once she took the job, she was all in, and she really stepped up. And there was also very amazing chess playing, poker playing by Mariko in that moment to outsmart Omni, the pissing samurai, to make sure that to de-escalate the situation and put him in a position where if he had tried to take that from the consort, he would have looked like the biggest asshole, and Toranaga would have had his head for touching her or the head of the household. The person that runs the household in that situation. The consorts, the household they get as much respect as the samurais in that situation. And if he had taken those guns, the barbarian, he could have ripped those guns away. Even if he is a Hatamoto, there's gray area there, trademark gray area there. But if he touched her, and that's why it was the smartest move to hand her the guns. Phil, Connor, or Ned Ryerson. Good to see Pale Horse Rider. Much love to you, my friend. I can see Homelander coming in, showing up in playing. It would like playing like a Dynasty Warriors game. It's freaking Homelander lands and just starts doing the eye buzz like with all the samurai armies. But yeah, anything else in this episode, Joe? I think we already talked about basically everything.
The spy in the village is most likely the other consort.
Yes, but and something you were talking about, just to get to the end of the episode, where the TV trope thing that you said. One thing I forgot that I realized in the notes when I was reading it back is it wasn't just the son coming up with the thought himself. The pissing samurai kind of whispered in his ear and kind of goaded him into doing that. So I don't know if he for whatever reason wanted to start the conflict. So it was like even more of a manipulation, which would make even more sense of it happening, or if it was just poor calculation by two people that don't have a lot of foresight. Either way, I think for me it made more sense, but I see what you're saying in the sense of the TV trope, but I do think it was worth it for the friggin' bloody gore that we got there, because I thought the gore really worked well. We're talking about Shogun right here, and we're gonna start wrapping things up because I don't want to keep Joe too much more than 2 hours here. When we're late night, I don't mind as much, but he has to start or end his day because he's probably been up all night. So any final thoughts on this episode of Shogun, Joe?
Oh, it was fantastic. I loved it. Like you said, it makes me on the edge of my seat the whole time. Loved every second of it, and cannot wait for the next.
Yep, and I said this before when you walked away for a second, but it's true. I talk just as much, and because I'm a loudmouth douchebag. But Joe, really, when it comes down to it, you don't have much to say or complain about or talk about when you like something. When you like something, you're just
I feel like I'm just like
repeating yourself.
Not just repeating. Yeah. Well, either way, I feel like I'm repeating myself. But like, I feel like I'm blowing too much. Like, listen, how much do you want to hear me like?
Yeah,
like blow smoke, like
lick its
blow
labia
kisses up their ass and shit.
Yeah,
like,
lick the labia or curdle
really
the balls.
Fucking good. I cannot wait for the rest of it. Like that's
it's
blowing.
And it's true though. It's like, but it's interesting too because it's like, it's a good cut for The Walking Dead to see the opposite stuff. But you're right. It's like when it comes down to it, it's not even about repeating over and over. It's just that you can only throw so much praise to something. And I don't want to do that thing where you throw so much praise that you're like, oh, I got to find something I don't like about it. Because maybe I can be quirky here about television stuff, but that's just television age that we live in. And I accept it. It is what it is. But like, I don't want to dig in so much that I'm like, oh, but this line, like, because this show is just pure joy for me. Like watching this it'll be fun to pick it apart and break it down. And when we talk about this whole season and we get into it and break it apart, the whole storyline, I want to have you and I listen to the audiobook or read the book after this and talk about our thoughts in the book versus the show and break down point for point those specific sort of things. And watch the 80s show again. I'm going to watch the 80s show for the first time. Have you watch it again so we can compare and contrast in the off season of this and squeeze some more Shogun content after when we're done with this, and maybe do a rewatch where we're sitting in the room and doing a watch of this, like those kind of things. But in our recaps here and talking about the episodes, I mean, we are going to be repeating ourselves and just giving this glowing praise. Is it a show for everyone? Is everyone going to feel the same way that we feel about the show? No. But I do think it's inarguably just one of the most well put together shows from front to back that we've had in many, many years. Right up there with, and again, this isn't about quality, about right up there with all those Apple Plus shows. And I would say, like, and I'm not saying better or worse. Some people might say Severance is, they like the season of Severance, but this is on. Those shows are on this quality level. This show is on that quality level. This is where the best television is happening right now. Hulu and Apple Plus. Because the other show I would put on this, didn't mention this last week, is another Hulu show. It's The Bear. The Bear is like one of the greatest things I've seen in 10 years of television. And it's also a Hulu show. Is it for everyone? No. Can give you anxiety. But the second season, the Fishes episode with Jamie Lee Curtis, can we give Jamie Lee Curtis all the awards in the world? I think these two shows are some of my favorite shows in 2 or 3 years, and they're both on Hulu. And then the other shows that I put on my list of some of my favorite, besides From, would all be Apple Plus shows. Shrinking, friggin' I'm really enjoying Constellation, friggin' Severance. And then Apple Plus has some like second tier shows that are better than a lot of what's going on Netflix or HBO these days. So, and I know Blue Eyed Samurai, you mentioned another show the other night to me that you watched on Netflix that you liked, Joe, that you told me to start watching. Yeah, so definitely check that out. And I would also say that nonfiction, and that's my last note for people. You want serious breakdown from people, don't watch us stupid YouTubers. And I know some of my YouTube friends are like, what do you mean don't watch us? But no, make sure this is one of those situations where, like in Better Call Saul, where I would say don't watch me, watch the Better Call Saul Insiders podcast, because the HBO Shogun podcast is actually really effing good. And they get really detailed in how this is shot and how this was filmed and decisions they made. When I like something, I like that they do the little Gimple Pimple hour at the end. It's just hilarious to me when they do it with stuff that's shit too, because no matter what, they're going to rationalize it. But this show is really good at just breaking down some of the differences, some of the reasons why they chose to make differences. And I think it's really exceptionally well done and well hosted. So I highly recommend the official Shogun podcast over all fan podcasts and live streams, including ours. So Joe, we will be back next week, definitely at 10:30. Maybe I'll give my quick thoughts on Shogun midweek on a flip phone review, and then we'll get your thoughts on Shogun on 10:30. And then starting after episode 6 of The Walking Dead, if I go on vacation, when I get back from vacation, we'll do the final couple of episodes of Shogun on Sunday nights and finish them on Sundays or Sunday afternoons around now. Actually, we could do them Sunday afternoons instead of Sunday nights because I know it's better for you. But I do want to do the last couple of Walking Dead episodes after the episodes air. Anger is strong. and so are we. Joe, thank you as always, buddy. We'll talk to you guys next time. Thank you. If you haven't already and you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. Share the channel with a friend. Natalie, the Fishes episode and the Bear, I would say almost the Bear season 1 and 2 are all a masterpiece for me. And I know not everyone's going to have equal value on shows. That's probably one of my favorite shows. Oh my God, I didn't see that. Pale Horse Rider with the $4.99 super chat. Thank you, Pale Horse Rider. Unbelievable, with a sticker, a little dancing around grimace going on right there, I think. Thank you so much, everybody. Enjoy your St. Patrick's Day. Get drunk. Patricia says, oh, I missed the stream, but I'll watch it after I see The Walking Dead. We were a little extra harsh on The Walking Dead. I hope it's okay. No, I'm sorry. Enjoy your St. Patrick's Day to those of you that drink. We love you guys. And yeah, I want to talk more about the bear. But next time. Talk to you guys next time.